Forget TikTok, because on Oh Gross, we got the Dick Doc and every uncomfortable conversation in between that you need to hear and talk about. We talk about lice, spoiled rice, and germs and bugs that may or may not be nice. Ah, so true. Follow Oh Gross podcast, where no topic is taboo for you.
Oh, gross. That drama's about to end, 'cause gross. Stop asking for a friend. Taboo. Icky's what we do. Your gross out journey starts right here on Oh, gross.
Welcome back to Oh Gross. I'm your host, Kara Kurtz. I'm joined by my co-host and very good friend, Jennie.
Good afternoon, Kara.
Good afternoon, my friend. So we are still talking about Kratom. This is going to be our last episode on it for now, but we wanted to round the conversation out because once again, right, Jennie, online, we have never had so much engagement.
Yes.
A lot of opinions on both sides, and we respect all of them. We talked to somebody who was a victim and lost their son. We talked to somebody who is an actual expert and doctor in the field and has been studying Kratom for over a decade. Today, we are going to bring on Joanne Rubino, who is a producer like myself, but she has been doing a documentary on Kratom for over 2 years. She is coming from a totally different perspective because she started this whole process objectively. And we thought, what a nice way to round the conversation out, to answer some of the things you guys have been saying online, but also to inform the public on a level that anyone can understand and talk real about. So today, Joanne Rubino is going to be joining us, Emmy-nominated producer and documentarian who has been doing a great project on Kratom herself. Hi, Joanne. So nice of you to join us.
Hi, it's nice to see you.
This is Jennie. She's my co-host and she's a scientist as well.
Hi, Jennie.
Hey, nice to meet you.
We just introed quickly that, and I will just remind everybody again, Joanne is a Emmy-nominated producer. Fun fact, we got joined together in a very interesting way, which I think is really important to mention because this conversation about Kratom is kind of, I think, spreading throughout communities. And we both have children at the same school. And I had a mom reach out to me and saw our first episode and said, hey, I have to connect you with this other mom who's done extraordinary work in the field of Kratom and has been researching a documentary for many years and has produced a documentary, and you need to talk to her. And Joanne and I were able to finally connect last weekend, and it was clear that we needed to have her on the show. And this was the perfect way to sort of round out this conversation and get everybody more information. And also have somebody who's a producer who's been investigating this. It's completely coming from an objective point of view. You're not a scientist. You're not somebody who personally lost somebody to Kratom. You came at this on your own, brought in obviously from a dear friend who had lost someone. But you came in trying to learn about this yourself from square one, correct?
Yes, I came in to, as you mentioned, a very dear friend of mine, Patty Wheeler, who lost her son. And I had known her for 20 years. I had been filming with her sons since they were 12. And one of her twins passed away when he was 27. So we've known each other a long time. And this came out of trying to help someone through a hard time. And the only way that I knew how to do that, since I'm a producer, was to make a film with her. And then we started on that journey together. But what I found out during the making of was mind-blowing to me.
And I know the film's not publicly fully released yet, but I will tell everyone, first of all, Joanne, what a great job.
Oh, thank you.
I mean, I think you did such an excellent job on this film. And I think what people need to know is you really showed all sides, but you also took it from perspective where anyone can understand what Kratom is, what it does to the body, and what we need to know about. I just want to say kudos to you. The film was amazing. But can you kind of take us back to when you started this process and what you knew about Kratom and what you started to discover?
Sure. Well, as I said, with Patty, working with her sons, it was a book series. That's how I was introduced to her, called Travels with Gannon and Wyatt. And they went all over the world to these amazing places. And so we were working on making a television show about it. And Patty and I stayed friends over the years. And then what was crushing was I hadn't talked to her in months. And then I heard from someone that Wyatt had passed away. And I was like, how is that possible? Her 27-year-old son, who had just graduated from TCU, it was just painful, and she was really going through it. So the process started by me saying, what can I do to help you? I didn't know anything about Kratom. I had never heard the word before. I had never heard anything about it on any level. And so he passed 3.5 years ago. So he passed. So 2 years after is when we started the filming journey of the physical doc, where we had hired Jamie and Jason Neese from Umbrella Academy, Horizon, Unreal, lots of amazing shows. And I went to them because they were twins, because I knew that they would lose their minds if something happened to one or the other of them. And they're also talented guys. So we were a very small crew. Patty was super involved in getting the right message across. So we knew that when we started the journey of making the documentary, this was all about one major thing: saving lives,
Yes.
period.
100%.
And so how do we save lives? We do that by educating people on what is this kratom? Why is it dangerous?
Yes.
And then you guys talked to Chris McCurdy. We brought in Chris McCurdy, we brought in Donna Papson, who, Chris is obviously one of the only guys out there who studies this at the level that he does.
Yeah.
He was super helpful and walked us through a lot of the science of it.
Absolutely.
And then we started talking to other moms. And once you start hearing those stories and you saw the film, I shed a lot of tears, and I can't imagine losing a child. So I only have one.
And over something that could have been prevented with education.
Yes.
Yes. And you mentioned this in your podcast too. It's coined gas station heroin because you can buy it on any shelf.
Right.
There are a lot of different forms of it, but what I learned on my journey of doing this, and again, it was me and Patty and the Niece brothers and our production manager, Elizabeth, and all of us just put it all together and just got on planes and went to Texas and knocked on doors and talked to people, as you mentioned, on both sides. And the hard part is the people on the side of don't take our kratom away, right?
Yes.
My only problem with that is there's no empathy for the fact that we have a lot of people who've lost a loved one. We're
Right.
talking about thousands, not
Which I
five.
want to clarify that. In our conversation we had this weekend, which I called Jennie about because I was just floored. Like you've come across thousands of deaths.
Thousands of deaths that had metragenine poisoning involved in it. You know, there are people who reach out and who will probably reach out, via an email to me afterwards and be like, how, you don't know what you're talking about, right? There's a whole industry that's making a lot of money.
Yes.
And I understand if you've been in an accident, if you have pain, but all of our physiology is different.
Exactly. And sometimes one person can take something and it won't affect them, and another person can, and it could be a near death, situation. And we hear you, all the people have commented, and we're going through the comments every day, as you know, and we're trying to respond to the ones that we can educate. But the truth is, without regulation and without some sort of specific understanding, it's very difficult to say, I'm sorry, Joanne, you can take it. Jennie, you can't.
Yep.
And I think it's also important to note from the scientific standpoint that from what I read, Joanne, about some of your interviews and research that you did, was some of these issues happened with many forms of kratom. So the organic form and many different types of synthesized forms. So I think that's important to note that
Yes.
it's not just 7-OH we're talking about. We're talking about many different forms,
Which is a
of
big
it.
comment we get a lot. A lot of people say to us just the concentrations. Now, we all know and we all agree, I'm sure all three of us here, the concentrations are a real problem.
Right.
But the truth is there are so much other proof, especially in what you have researched on your end, Joanne. And I also want to point out, when Jennie and I first started this journey, it wasn't an argument because we don't argue, but well, I guess we have sometimes about certain things, right? but we were discussing, is it addictive or not? Right?
Right.
And because there's one part of people said, no, it's not addictive. It could be habit forming. The other part, and your film really, I think, tackled that well. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because that was the big eye opening. And Jennie was on the position of, no, this is addictive.
Yeah.
Right. And we have to look at it as something that's addictive. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, and I have to say, just recently, since the film has been completed, we have joined other people who are trying to change the industry and hold people accountable. Patty just went and supported the film in Utah,
Mhm.
where the reason I'm bringing this up is that it's more clear now how addictive it is. We talked to since the documentary in January aired at Dances with Films as the world premiere, we met people from Kratom Quitters. We met a gentleman by the name of Dean Francis
Oh, yeah, great.
who they were either addicted, and there were people in our film that were addicted,
Yes.
and there is people that are battling it, like, to the point where their lives are ruined,
Yes.
and hopefully they can crawl back to a place where they feel like they've got it beat, but it's an extremely addictive substance, and, there are people out there, and I wanna say to them, you can be taking it for 10 years, and that there are people out there who've been taking it a long time. They take the same dose every day. There's people in our film that have said that. And, it works for me. That's what, that's what they're and that's okay in this, but if they can open their eyes and their ears to also understanding this is a product, a leaf off of a tree, how bad can it be, which is also quoted from the film.
Mhm.
It's not just the extracts, it's not just 7-OH, it's physiology, it shouldn't,
Right.
Eli Cohen is a lawyer in that, and he said
Mhm.
something that's sitting next to a pack of Skittles on the shelf should not be able to mix with an antihistamine and kill you.
Right.
Mhm.
And also just to not to interrupt you, but to add to what you're saying right now, how I started on this journey is my dear friend since kindergarten came to me because his girlfriend had passed away after taking it for a very many, many, many years to help with her opiate addiction. If she had issues along the way and she didn't know about it, we don't know because we talk about a lot. People don't know that kratom might be affecting them. They don't think to tell the doctors it's the kratom.
Mhm.
But she ended up passing away because they believe it was mixing it with alcohol the day before, right? Not necessarily even the day of. And so I think that's important. And she was one of those people, Joanne, that was on it for a long time and it really was helping her because it had been recommended to her. And then all of a sudden, her body, her physiology, whatever happened, there's a change. Whether it was that she got a higher concentration and she didn't know, or, what it might be, there's a lot of factors, but still, you
Yeah.
could be taking it a long time and still have something happen.
The strongest message is that it's a substance that has to be investigated much more deeply,
Mhm.
and I'm not a scientist, I don't have a medical background. I'm just frustrated that it's not something that people understand, enough to give it the respect, I guess.
Mhm.
I don't know if that's the right word, but
Right.
you're talking about the addiction. I mean, you heard the people that were in the film, but also there were so many others that are addicted to this, and you can take a person who was addicted to heroin
Mhm.
15 years ago, and they say to get off kratom was more difficult.
Right.
The bodybuilder that was in our film,
Her
she
story was incredible.
yeah,
I thought, yeah.
and that Feel Free, which is in a beautiful blue bottle,
So, yeah, pretty.
sitting up on shelves and enticing people. People are taking 6 to 9 of those a day sometimes.
Right.
I
Mhm.
mean, that's a lot of money those people are making, right? So
Right.
they have a reason to want you to be addicted, and it's, as many people say, a money grab, but I can't speak to it from a medical perspective, only what I learned along the way, and other people would say, we interviewed Matt Cadow, as you know, who is a big proponent. He loves to support and call the drug deaths all multi-drug deaths,
Mhm.
Mhm.
but if that person hadn't taken the kratom, they wouldn't have died, right? So you
Right.
can
Right.
say, "Oh, well, they had a antihistamine in their system and an antidepressant." Okay, well, they would have been fine had they not then had a Shake Weight bottle and drank, they would have been fine.
And it was Donna Papson, right? That's how you say her name?
Yeah.
Toxicologist.
Mhm.
She even said that postmortem now, over 1,800, is that correct? 1,800 postmortem autopsies are having kratom show up. So, I mean, That's not you can't you know what I mean? It's clearly a factor, you know what I mean, and something especially if you went back how many years ago, people only saw it once in a while, right?
That's the key.
But, I firsthand, I know someone, and this is one of the things that Kara and I talked about when we first
Yeah.
initially had this conversation was I know someone who's an addict, had several years of sobriety, was told to use Kratom for pain. And the way she described that it reacted in her brain was similar to an opioid. And
Absolutely.
she ended up having to go to rehab to get off of it. And even she said it was extremely hard to get off of, similar to taking heroin. And then some of the research that we've learned is that it does react similarly with the brain receptors to heroin or an opioid. So it is a similar reaction, chemical reaction in the brain, which would make sense why someone like my friend who had struggled with addiction, again, had been sober for several
Already
years, took
wired to
it,
the predisposition.
and then she
Right.
dealt with it again. Mhm.
And I think that's a good point too, Jenny. And Joanne, I have a question for you as a follow up. But we got a lot of comments. Well, caffeine can be addicting, and I even said when we answered, that's come up like multiple times on our comments, by the way. And I said last week, I was like, clearly me. I'm definitely in love. Like I have to cut myself off at 2 cup coffees a day, or else I talk even faster. But I do think, right?
Whoa.
But I do think, on the other hand, it goes back to our body makeup, our physiology, the way our brain is wired.
Mhm.
And if you're somebody who has a tendency, or whether that's heredity or whatever it might be, to have addiction, right? This is something that it's like it's playing roulette. John, what do you say? People say, well, caffeine's addicting. How is kratom different than caffeine? Is what I kind of want to break down to layperson, because we keep hearing this, and I feel like, to me, one is like, yes, if you drink 10 cups of coffee a day for X amount of time, maybe your body can be dependent, but kratom is different. How would you answer that with your research and what you've discovered?
Well, you can drink 10 cups of coffee. It's probably going to eventually do something to you, right?
Right, right.
But
Dehydration for sure.
but if
Yeah.
you drink 10 cups of coffee and you have a glass of wine and you take
Right.
an antihistamine and you're not going to be dead from the coffee. I don't think there's ever been a case of that. We interviewed Matt Caddo, but we also tried to interview J.W. Ross, who's
Yes.
the Feel Free guy. He didn't want to. There's a lot more to that story, but he didn't participate. Although his Matt Lowe, a gentleman that is with the Global Kratom Coalition, he said it in our documentary, which was a public domain, not a comment he gave to us, that you can OD from water. You can die from drinking too much water. Sure. Uh, but to make the comparison of
Mhm.
something that is available to people, that is being sold as a sort of David Breger said it in the documentary. He's like, if you didn't know anything about it and you were looking for something to help you and someone said kratom and you put in, what are the benefits of kratom? You would want to start taking it too.
Right.
Mhm.
And it's kind of been, that cure all. If you look at the videos, and you go on and say, what pro kratom, people are like, I feel amazing. I feel high. I feel, like,
Like on
okay.
the Joe Rogan show where they're like, "Hey, I can take on the world. I'm
Yeah,
on kratom."
exactly. I'm not even sure if Joe still does it.
I know. I haven't heard him talk about it because in our research we looked too to see is Joe still mentioning it, and we couldn't find anything in the last recent years. So I wondered if he was even doing it anymore.
He's a smart man, so
Right.
whether he is or he isn't, I think he's smart enough to know too, wow, there's a lot of things happening with that.
Right.
Maybe there's the negative side of it I don't wanna be involved in, and
Right.
I think that anyone who does their research, the people who fight so hard to keep kratom available to them
Mhm.
are, I would guess, 'cause, you never can say for another human being, addicted to it. Like,
Right.
if you have been taking it for 10 years, the same dose, and you're freaking out if you had to stop,
Right. There's
that's an addiction, right? And a coffee, like you were just saying.
might give you a headache if you stop for a couple
Yeah, 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 but it's
Right.
Mhm.
not, Look, they supersized it, it's true. The extracts 7-OH is a newer thing, right? Like, I mean,
Right.
and I'm not speaking of it in a medical sense, so I hope nobody.
It's like the last 2 years, correct?
Mhm.
Like the last 2-year window? Yeah.
Yeah, and it's gotten because everyone's like, "Oh, crap, there's a legal substance on the shelf that I can take,"
Right.
like I'm on opioids, and like how if you wanna get high
Mhm.
Right.
and you can just walk into a gas station and get it. I mean, people will take advantage of that,
Right.
and I have to say, even like Joe Sokol, who's in our, documentary, he is a small batch seller of the plain leaf kratom. Really like Joe, even and, he admittedly says, "I only sell this one kind, but, I'm not saying I wanna do that forever."
Mhm.
I think he's a good person and is smart enough too to know there's a major drawback to all forms of kratom. There's a long-term negative effect that the industry itself is having on all communities, but
Mhm.
we are making headway though.
And I wanna kinda just for do a little comparison, and it's not exact, but I was in Colorado filming with MTV actually on a documentary the day that, marijuana was legalized, because the point was at the time is we wanna sort of track, like, how this was changing, the industry, and a lot of young kids were actually from college coming to work in the cannabis industry, but and a lot of what we did our research on was cool, was you got to see all the medical benefits that were gonna happen. We talked to people who were cancer survivors, and you got to see the salves that have all these great benefits when the dosing is controlled and you know what you're getting. Cut to these dab buses were becoming popular in. So you had this juxtaposition happening in this town in Colorado where you had all this wonderful medical things happening. This is right when it was legalized, where you're like, wow, this is so amazing. This is gonna help so many people. And then you were having kids that were renting these dab buses and having like seizures from right who had done marijuana, smoked a bunch of marijuana, and just the one kid maybe drank a
Mhm.
bunch of alcohol and could get the dab bus and would start foaming at the mouth. And they cut back. I know there's been a lot of laws now around things like you can't get a party bus the same way you could back then when we learned. There is a learning process to anything, and I know that's one thing that Dr. McCurdy kind of is dedicating his life to is, can I find the way this can be helpful in a safe way, right? Is there a way? But he also, the same sense, has come across this research where now they have proof that babies in utero are being born, right, exposed to it and having withdrawal symptoms, right? So we just have to understand that we're not saying in this conversation that, oh wow, we don't recognize that kratom might have helped some people or that it doesn't have potential. What we are recognizing is that right now where it is at, right? Even if you're the person who thinks you've got the distributor who's the good guy is only going to give you the good kratom. If you're having to take it and it's not regulated by somebody like a physician or some sort of for somebody who understands, right? We know that it's addictive, and we see that now there are whole programs to get people off of it. And I think one of my favorite parts of the film, Joanne, is when you walk into and you finally get to talk to somebody who is selling, because I know you went into many, many gas stations and many, many smoke shops to ask people, like, do you understand what you're selling? You ask them questions. And the guy picks up the small thing and he says, well, this is one dose. And you're like, this is one dose. Can you show me where it says one dose? And on the back of the bottle, it doesn't it doesn't have a dose.
No.
That's
It
the
does
danger. That
yeah,
that
it
is
says
the
consult your
danger.
physician.
Mhm.
Consult your physician for the dose to know how to take it.
Yes.
So if we have a product on the market, it's not like Tylenol, and I wanna go back to when we had Randy, Mead on and what happened with her son. Her son was taking it innocently without mixing with alcohol, was not taking 7-OH. He was using it like he would for a headache because someone told him it helps headaches. Because there's no dosing. He OD'd on it, right? Because his headache was still there.
Susan
Mhm.
Eppert's son, Matthew, died from kratom only,
Yep.
and he hadn't been taking it very long, and a lot of these people hadn't been taking it very long. There's not enough information, period.
Mhm.
There's not
Exactly.
enough regulation.
Yes.
Depending on the state you're in, you drive down the street and there's just kratom signs everywhere, and
Right.
like cigarettes, like marijuana, like anything else, and again, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but like a carcinogen, right? That has
Yeah.
like
Mhm.
I feel again like what I learned during this whole process was simply it's a horrible crime that it's backwards. Like all these people
We
are
were looking.
dying, and now
Right.
we have to go. It should have been researched first, right?
And then released. Right.
Right.
Regulated.
Exactly. And that way people know. And Carrie, people say that the key to the film is that scene you just brought up and your reaction as well, right? That when he picked it up and he was like, yeah,
And he was a good guy, like, trying to be like, "You know what? I think there's a problem here on the way it's being sold." And he was being so forthcoming, and then he's like, "Oh, wait, there's no dosing,"
thank
right?
God for him because I went into, we didn't show half of them. I was just in and
Yeah.
out and in and out. Most people were like, no, owner's not here, go away. And like,
Yeah.
they didn't want to talk to me. And if there's not a problem with it, why are people so, you know,
Worried and tight-lipped about it.
yeah,
And the thing too is, like, I know that a lot of people are like, "Don't take Kratom away." Again, I'm not a big proponent of, like, throw the baby out with the bathwater, but I think things have to be safe, and we've had a lot of trouble, as we know, in the country, in the world, about things being controlled by governing bodies that maybe shouldn't have, and we're not saying that, like, the FDA is the end all be all of how life's gonna be saved, but I do think it's kinda crazy. You walk into a supermarket in California, and a loaf of bread's gonna have a warning because of the chemicals it's exposed to. You walk into a gas station in many states in the United States, and you don't not only do you not have a dosing, it's like, "Call your doctor, here you go, buy this next to the Skittles."
Yes, and your kids can buy it, and
Yes.
that's the danger and the liability I think that is blowing up, especially as this documentary gets out and the information is getting out, because if one of my kids walked into somewhere and was able to buy that next to the Skittles,
Right.
yeah,
I would be blowing it up everywhere I could too and suing everybody, and that's what's going to get people in trouble, and that's why I think this is so important, because we're putting something into our human bodies that there's no manufacturing regulation with.
right.
What the hell is wrong with that? You know?
Yeah. Well, we reached out to the FDA and we had Farnaz on as
Mhm.
well. And the reason that she was on, so she's not really a Kratom person. She is someone that has worked in the drug community to get drugs through the FDA process.
I actually know her. I worked on a show where we consulted with her. Mhm.
Oh, awesome.
Okay.
Well, when she
Yeah, yeah.
said, she looked at me.
Before she was at the FDA, but yeah, go ahead, sorry, I didn't mean to
No, no,
interrupt.
no. I was working with her doing a documentary that's not finished. It's on hold right now about these cancer treatments. And that's where I met Farnaz. And I talked to her about Kratom because we were doing the doc. And she was like, well, let me read up about it. And then she said to me, how is it, first of all, that they're calling it a food?
Right.
That's such a good point.
Yeah.
Exactly. How are they calling it a food? I forgot to bring that up. That was one of the big things in the film too. How are they calling it a food?
Right. And Patty says the same thing.
Yeah.
She like, what is going on here? When money's involved in anything, and that's just the way of the world. When, lobbyists and all of that. Again, I don't profess to be an expert in any of that, but it's the FDA wouldn't talk to us, right?
Right.
When one person dies, right? When 10 people die, when 100 people die, when thousands of people have something in their system that is a through line to their demise, like you can't tell me that there's not something wrong and that it needs to be hold, let's stop, let's figure this out before anybody else dies, and then we
And
will.
and even if it's just making adjustments and putting in regulations, and
Mhm.
I think that's the other reason too. I was so excited about you coming on. We've gotten so many comments, especially with Randy, who so openly shared her story, where people come and be like, "Oh, that's so terrible, but that's an anomaly. Oh, that's so terrible, but must have been 7 or 8, and it wasn't in her, son's circumstance. Oh, that rarely happens. There was a lot of like that really happens, or this is propaganda." And you're coming from the place where, for 2 years, correct? You researched this and you came across all these cases, thousands of deaths you came across
Thousands.
where kratom was involved. So again, to clarify, whether it is mixing it, everyone says, well, I would never mix with alcohol, but would you with an antihistamine because you had an allergic reaction,
Mhm.
And
right?
let's be
Would you?
clear, kratom
Yeah,
can cause you to have itchy skin,
right. So you take
watery
something.
eyes. So why wouldn't you maybe take a Benadryl to help you out there?
Exactly.
The young man in our documentary's talking about that. He was
Yep.
getting styes in his eyes and
And
his
he said itchy,
skin.
really skin. Yep, his skin was itchy and dry. And I think that that's a good point. And by the way, the only way they found out about the antihistamine, why? Someone died,
That's right. And
right?
then they saw a correlation through multiple autopsies of an antihistamine, but there were plenty. I
But what else hasn't been discovered, right? That could also,
Well, and to be clear, they weren't testing for mitragynine until recently. Like, and when I say
right,
recently, I'm not going to quote the exact time, but it was only in the past, less than 5 years ago
Mhm.
that they were testing for mitragynine. And then now it's a regular thing. But there are many of these people who are like, "Oh, I can use kratom to stop because I don't wanna drink alcohol, because I don't
right.
I don't wanna do these other things." And it's touted as something you can take safely. It's an herbal supplement. I
Right.
Donna says it, everybody says it. How bad can it be? And if you don't understand it, and I hope that our film, I really, yeah, no idea, like, we're close to distribution, and we are, hopeful because we want it on a platform that it gets on the most eyeballs. People
Yes.
can make their own
Uh-huh.
decisions. I can't tell someone,
Right.
but, we had to clear everything. We had to make sure. Like, people have reached out to me and been like, "You don't know what you're talking about." I'm like, "Um, actually, it's not out of my brain. It's out
Right.
of the research, and we had to get this cleared as being true. We had to prove
Right.
it." There's nothing to be
This isn't an
argued.
opinion piece. This isn't
No,
an
it's
opinion piece. And you could tell that during the film. The experts are the ones leading the conversation. You are asking the questions,
yeah.
and everyone in this film is telling their personal experience. But when it comes to the facts, it's coming from the people who have the actual facts. This isn't an opinion piece for you or anyone. It is a great educational tool. First of all, let's tell everybody. Let's stop for a second. Can they go to the website and just to learn more in general before it's fully distributed? Can you tell everybody where to go?
Yeah, you can go to kratommovie.com or you can go to kratomsideeffectsmayinclude.com. Either one will take you there. We try and keep it updated with as much information as possible. Patty's been interviewed on People Magazine, Forbes Magazine. Again, I think what's really important is legislation has started to happen.
Mhm.
Um,
Right, and that's what I wanted to talk about too. Yes.
yeah, so we are working on talking to colleges, Patty speaking, showing the film, and then talking to people at colleges because the audience is, it doesn't discriminate.
Right.
As we were doing it and we were learning about more people and the stories, there was a mother of four and a nurse and there's so many people who literally were just
6 people in California last month, it was the
last
announcement.
month.
Last month, yeah.
Again, you have a bunch of people who are investigating this to make a documentary, and you're like, "Jesus, I understand why you take it," because it's dangling a carrot where
It
it's like,
sounds like a miracle. I mean, I have to say, we've even had that inside sort of it. The more you get into it, you're like, this is dangled like a miracle
Uh-huh.
supplement.
yeah,
It's like, I'm not gonna be tired anymore. Anyone who's in perimenopause is like, "What?" But on the other hand, this will help you sleep, you're gonna have all the energy, right? Like, you're not gonna wanna drink, you're gonna all these different things. It sounds like this miracle thing, and I wanna bring up too, 'cause we've had a lot of comments or even people we've talked to initially. "Oh, I don't know what kratom is. This doesn't pertain to me." Here's why, guys, this conversation pertains to everybody. There will be, and there probably already is, another kratom,
Mhm.
right?
Absolutely.
This whole conversation isn't just about kratom. It's where it started. It's about if there is any supplement that you pick up, like that wonderful pinnacle scene in your film, and it does not have a dosing and it says consult a physician.
Mhm.
This is the problem out there with these manufacturers.
yeah,
We need to demand you can't do that.
yeah,
Mhm.
We need to be as consumers saying, you're not allowed to give us something where you're like, go, you do the work and find out how much you can take.
right.
Right. So, I mean, I think that's the big point here. Kratom, whatever the next thing might be, we all have family members. Many of us may or may not have children. It does not matter. There will be something else that will have this issue. And all these discussions is telling you buyer beware,
Yeah.
Mhm.
right?
Well,
Buyer beware.
the directors, Jamie and Jason, too, have already laid out several more episodes, if you will, beyond where we went with this documentary, but also it touches on exactly what you just said, which is the rules of what you have to do are just not strenuous enough for supplements. And it's, again, if you look at it, it's all about money.
It's all about money. And we're fighting with each other. And I want to say this to our social community. First of all, we appreciate all your stories. Obviously, we want everything to be respectful, and we don't appreciate sometimes when people are not respectful in
Yeah.
our community. But the ones of you who have reached out to say this has changed my life or I have a different opinion, we respect all of your comments. But what this is doing to us is dividing us to fight against each other instead of fighting against the people who are creating this issue, which is exactly what you're talking about, Joanne, is the people who are putting it on the market and not taking the responsibility, right? To keep everybody safe. Those agencies that aren't having some sort of regulation for us as consumers to make the best decision for our bodies with all of the knowledge.
You just touched on something super important for people who take Kratom that do not want it to be taken away. I get it, but don't be mad at us. Like, don't be mad at the moms who've lost kids. Don't be
Right.
mad at people who are investigating it and trying to find out. Think about the industry itself. And
Right.
there
Yes.
we name names in the documentary, which I don't need to do now. Everybody knows who's what, where, and the companies that manufacture Kratom. They're just making money, and the more you
Right.
take and the more they don't give a damn is the thing.
Right.
That's the thing. It's the same thing with any drug dealer, right? Nobody gives a damn if they're making money, how it's affecting the community or anybody who's buying it.
Right.
They're not being conscientious about that. They're raking in dollars. So be mad at them for
Be mad
not.
at them. They're taking your right for safety away. No one discussing it is taking your right to have it away.
Yeah.
They're taking the right of safety away.
That's such a good point.
And I think at the end of the day, like, listen, there's no one who hasn't said there's some medicinal benefit here if researched the right way,
That's
if
right.
extracted the right way, if distributed the correct way. We have not interviewed one person who says this is a junk, right? This is a
No.
made up thing. This is a made up thing. No. It's just that when you have someone like myself tinkering with what the dosage should be, right?
Yeah.
Or deciding what the extraction should be, and it's not coming from a level that is safe. Be mad at those who are not making this safe for you, not the people who are investigating, because the ones who are investigating, their whole goal, even though everyone's on different sides, ban it, whatever, we can reach a neutral ground where it's safe, where things are safe and distributed in a way
Yeah.
that is regulated, and whether that's got to be a doctor or whatever it needs to be, right, at the end of the day.
Yeah.
I'm itching to restate this too, like once again, is that what Kara is saying for everyone out there is that as a consumer, when you purchase something, you want to be able to trust that what you are purchasing and putting in your body is safe, and
Right.
that the dosage that it tells you to take is safe, and that
Went
the
through research.
ingredients and the research behind it, that the manufacturer has a responsibility to make sure that the consumer is safe. And that's where everything is all up in the air, is at that level.
And we've had it with other products, just to be fair, because I know there are going to be comments. I can already see it in my mind. We know that with dyes, there's an issue, right?
Right.
We know that there's plenty of food products out there that hopefully, now, and my husband's a cancer survivor. We talked about it many times on the podcast. And what we had to do when he had colon cancer 15 years ago was we got rid of the majority of the food that was being sold at that time. And thank God there's been 15 years later, so much has changed and continues to change. And what we can put on that level. And this is no different. No one is saying that, yes, everything that has been on the market has been safe as if it's food. We're saying in general, this is an issue, and especially an issue right now because no one's paying attention to these deaths.
Right.
And no one is paying attention to that people are dying. And if they could have correlated that a bunch of people ate those dyes and died, 1,000 people died, you know what I mean, in a short time frame, what do you think would have happened with the dyes? Right? They would have been off the market, right?
That's the most heartbreaking thing. Do not be blameful to parents.
We're looking for answers.
Yeah, and also to say, and we heard this, like, oh, your kid was abusing drugs. No, actually, no, and we have proof of that, and we know what was in their body. We know what they had, what their lifestyle was prior to that. These are just very unfortunate things that have happened, but like not to be dismissed, which like Mac Haddo, he's an interesting man.
Yeah.
And I appreciated,
Do you want to clarify for everybody who, because I so to explain just a one liner.
like, who he is.
Yeah, background. Yeah.
Well, he's been the face basically of the AKA, the American Kratom Association, that Mac Haddow is basically the spokesperson for. He's been a lobbyist, and there's a lot of information in our documentary that comes from him and comes from
Mhm.
others that have researched him and gone into depth with who he is, who he works for, how he makes money doing that and supporting it. And we also, on the other side, because they broke away from the American Kratom Association, was the Global Kratom Coalition.
Mhm.
And so these are two separate groups, and both have a different approach. The Global Kratom Coalition speaks more about, yes, we want legislation and we want these rules and we want all these things. But let's be clear, they also have companies that sell feel free and other things too. So
Right.
yeah, it is a complicated mess
Mhm.
of an industry. And what's happening now, and I would just say I'm really proud of Patty Wheeler and Dean and all these individuals who are out there making change. And
And Randy Mead, the mother we interviewed, who
yep,
was able to change in her state legislation. Yep.
I can tell you that just now, something passed in Utah that was amazing. Something's just went down in Virginia in a good way in terms of just passing legislation and getting.
And Michigan was just in the news, I think, yesterday that they're going to bring it to the table as well.
It's something that needs to be done. I am not going to say it needs to be banned 100%. I'm just saying that it's been like the Wild West out there, and
100%.
it needs to change.
And we talked about this from the very first episode, even how it's distributed, in some states, it's really up to the retailer to decide if they're not going to sell it to a 12-year-old.
Yeah.
Depending on your state. There are states that have 25 and older, there are states that have 21, there are states that have 18. It's so varying from what we've seen. But there are states where it's up to the retailer to say your 12-year-old can buy that or not.
I tell you, this has been the weirdest journey of my career, only because this isn't what I do.
I know.
Mhm.
We should talk a little bit about that. Yeah, exactly. That this is,
Uh,
what has that been like for you jumping into this world?
Like I said, when anyone you care about goes through something and you have a way to help, you're going to do it
Right.
if you're a good friend. So the fact that I'm still living in the world after, all this time, and we are just now getting to the point where hopefully we have a distribution deal coming that will make it available to many, many, many more people. Like, I'm like, Jesus, how am I still, Kratom is so around me all the time now in terms of phone calls and setting up
Yeah.
like college tours and talking to different people about what can we do to make change. And I will continue to support the legislation that will hopefully change the industry and save lives. I will support my friend Patty and hopefully continue that fight. But it has been a weird journey because I have scripted projects that I'm working on, and a podcast that launched recently, a scripted podcast that we're taking out in the world. But this is, to be clear, most documentaries hit the airwaves after the fact. So
Right.
it's a documentary that's done like, look what happened. Now we're going to tell you the story. We are
100%.
full throttle in the middle of it happening.
And the story has just begun.
That's right. And so that makes it even more intense
Mhm.
because kratom's being manufactured everywhere and people are making
Right.
hand over fist. It's a multi-billion-dollar business and people are continuing to die. And I mean, gosh, it's a bit overwhelming actually,
Mhm.
you know.
It's daunting, it seemed like after talking to Dr. McCurdy too, just the scope, the
Mhm.
gravity of everything, and he's trying, to get the research in, but there's just so much, and so
Yeah.
much that hasn't even been touched yet as far
Yeah.
as that, so it does seem huge.
Just in general, like documentaries, people understand because we do a lot of investigative, documentary work. And I get this question all the time. Like, we have projects that people will make assumptions like, oh, this is your opinion. And we've spent a decade, you know what I mean, on researching it. And when you get yourself involved in something of this magnitude, like Joanne has, it becomes your life. and your mission. I know you have other things you're still doing, but it's like the driving force, and it's to get to the bottom and also to make the change. And that's why it is so important for everyone to have an open mind and understand that, like, I know there's a lot of junk out there. I know TikTok is where a lot of people are getting their news, and it ain't right. Right. But when somebody takes the time to make a film like this and really, like she said, this is just the beginning. And I can say from a personal perspective, you're not doing it for the money. You're
Oh
doing
God,
it for the
no.
cause. There's no money.
There's no money.
There's no money. It's not like anything else you produce.
No.
It is literally for the mission. And the mission is coming from the fact that there's a search for just what the truth is. And what is the truth is what I love about this film. And you did such a great job in trying to
Thank you.
find the truth. But I have to say, whether you're pro or against Kratom, when this is available, you need to watch it, because you did such a great job at balancing it that it told everyone's story. And you can tell that people were coming to the table telling it as it is for them. And I'm so glad we got to connect, because this is just the start of our conversation too.
Right. No, and I appreciate you guys. You guys have done a great job on the other episodes that surrounded this, and talking to Chris, and just having enough forethought to think people need to hear about this. People need to know. And so I'm with you on there's no taking sides. It's not about that.
No. No, taking aside, and I just want to remind everybody before we wrap up too, like, my friend whose girlfriend passed away is how this started. And he thought at the time, he wanted to do anything to help get the awareness out there. But it was just a year ago recently that his girlfriend has passed. And he found on the journey of just when it came down to it for us to who we were going to interview and how we were going to talk, that he emotionally wasn't even ready. You have to understand, and he is one of the most open-minded people I know in the world, who is never anti-Kratom, whatever, but he knew, I need to get people talking about this. That's the only thing I can do, no matter what the answer is. Like, there has to be regulation. And he went into the gas station of where I believe if it was smoke shop or gas station, I don't remember, but it's one of the two. He lives in Nevada, and started asking questions after his girlfriend passed away. The person who was the retailer said they had somebody else just like 2 weeks before also passed away.
Oh, wow.
So this is something that, is hitting multiple communities, and having a conversation, again, isn't something to get upset about. It is join the conversation and keep an open mind. Because since the day I talked to my friend, I've kept an open mind on this journey. And I want to thank, all the victims who are dealing with this, who came forward and are continuing to talk and continue to be advocates. Once again, Joanne, I want to thank you for all the work that you're doing.
Oh, no,
Because I know it's not
appreciate it,
easy.
and you guys keep up the good work too. It's a worthy cause for sure.
Once again, I'm going to have you tell everybody, remind them again, the 2 different websites they can go to check out information about your film.
Well, the film is Kratom Side Effects May Include in .com, and you can also just type in kratommovie.com, and you can find a lot of information there.
And we're also going to have a link on our website as well. And, and listen, it's okay to be a naysayer. If you want to see more stories, the website is great for that as well. There is a lot of press on the website. There's a lot of other, just to get information. We'll have it on our website at ogross.com as well. And I want to thank you so much for joining us today, Joanne. And
Thank you, ladies. Thank you
thank
very
you.
much.
really appreciate it. When it comes to Kratom, we understand there is a big debate, and that people are angry and afraid that their Kratom's being taken away. But this isn't about sides, right? We got people who are dying, and yes, there are people who are being helped. But the truth is, we need to be angry at the people who are distributing this. We need to get mad at the people who are not selling us something that is safe. As a consumer, you have rights. And just like you wouldn't let someone give you bread on a shelf with something in it that's going to kill you, get mad, yes, but not at the people who have lost someone, and not the people who are investigating Kratom and figuring out what has happened. Get mad at the people who are selling it to you, right, with absolutely no dosing or any regulation.
Right. It's about at the manufacturing level, and then coming back down to the consumer level, us. It's about us as consumers knowing
rights.
that we're safe.
And we have rights. You have rights. You
Exactly.
have rights. Talk to us. We understand. But also, even those who are pro-Kratom, you have rights. Get mad at the people who are selling things that do not have a dosage on it for you, right? Change that. If you are pro-Kratom, you still have rights as a consumer to say, you know what? I think this helps me, but you need to be responsible, and you need to tell me what my dosage needs to be, where it's coming from, what the concentration is, and how I'm, in general, how are you manufacturing this?
Mic drop. And before we go, if you or someone you know is struggling with substance abuse, you can contact SAMHSA's national hotline. It's 1-800-662-HELP or 1-800-662-4357.
If you're looking for more information, you can go to our website, ogross.com, or join us on socials at It's O Gross to continue this conversation that's very important.
And while you're at it, be sure to subscribe or follow Oh Gross so you don't have to chase the algorithm. Everything from Oh Gross just shows up where you already are: Substack, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, or Spotify.
Oh, gross. That drama's about to end, 'cause gross. Stop asking for a friend. Taboos. Icky's what we do. Psoriasis, podiatrist, and pinworms too. It's so gross. No need for strife, because gross. Life's just part of life. It's just science. Yeah, it's not so weird. We got the facts, nothing to fear. Oh, gross. It's just science, no, it's not weird. It's just science, nothing to fear. It's just science, so wipe those tears.